This is Graz from the Netflix show Making Fun, and you are listening to Fascination Street podcast.
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with John Graziano, Graz, from the Netflix TV show Making Fun. If you haven't heard of that show or checked out that show like I hadn't last week, go check it out. It's fun for the whole family. Little kids, boys, girls, moms, dads. Everybody's going to really enjoy this show. It's about making things. It's super, super cool. I promise you're going to enjoy it. In this episode, we get to know Graz. We get to know where he came from, how he became a maker. Heck, I even get to find out what a maker is. Did you know there's makers and there's a whole maker community? Well, I just found all that stuff out, and you're going to love it. We also talk about how he met the rest of the people that are on the show Making Fun, the other makers, if you will. And then we talk a little bit about what his day job is, which sort of segued into how these other wonderful things happened, how he met some of these people, how the show got made. And we also talk a little bit about his other project. He makes knives, and they're beautiful. You guys are going to love this TV show. Again, it's on Netflix. It's called Making Fun. There's only 8 episodes, and it's going to leave you wanting more, I promise. This is my conversation with Graz from Netflix's Making Fun, John Graziano.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street podcast, John Graziano. Graz, how you doing, man?
Not too bad. Thank you for having me. How you doing?
I am Wonderflonium. Streetwalkers, that's what my listeners are called. I love it.
That's fantastic.
Previous guest came up with that name, and I just rolled with it. I love it. So, Streetwalkers, and I guess I'll tell you too, John, Graz. Okay, so, every once in a while, there's a single mom in the neighborhood who needs you to watch her kid for a couple of hours while she's doing whatever the hell. Normally, every Tuesday, my wife and I, we babysit, for lack of a better term, this 9-year-old kid for a couple of hours while his mom's doing whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this past Tuesday, my wife had to work a little bit late, so it was just me and this little kid, this 9-year-old little boy. Because it was just us two dudes, we decided we're not going to watch wild animals or fur babies or whatever the hell we were watching before. We're not going to watch any Pokemons or whatever the other things are. We're flipping through the Netflix. He lands on this show. It's called Making Fun. I never heard of this show. I guess because we were on the kids' profile and we had watched some other things, baking competitions, bake and build, kind of things like that. I guess that's why it came up in the algorithm, because it's never come up on my profile.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, well, this looks interesting, right? We watched the trailer. We're like, all right, cool. Let's watch it. Ladies and gentlemen, Streetwalkers, if you will, Making Fun on Netflix is amazing. It is, and I can't tell you how many people I have told since Tuesday. It is so much fun. It's fun for the entire family. That's one of the things that I like about it, is that it's fun for adults and it's fun for little kids. It's like, I don't know, Shrek, right? I'm going to let you explain what it is when we get there, but I just wanted you to know how I found you, and I wanted everybody else to know how awesome you are, because I watched it on Tuesday. Wednesday, I tweeted out at somebody who I know who's really into woodworking. You liked it and retweeted it, and then I immediately followed you and asked you if you'd be on my show. And here we are. It's 4 days later, and boom.
Crazy how things
You
work.
literally moved heaven and not literally. You literally moved heaven and earth, literally, to make this happen. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and change your last name to Gratitude, because I have all the gratitude in the world for you. So thank you, Gratitude.
Gratitude. Yeah, that's perfect. I will take that. I will change my family crest, and now it will be from the family of Gratitude.
But the cool thing is, after you change your family crest, you can just make it.
There you go. Yeah, I can jump on a CNC, make a family crest, and there you go. I can start a whole new family. I really appreciate the super kind words. It's awesome to hear how people discover the show. You put it perfectly. I mean, we feel that it's kind of a perfect balance that kids can enjoy it, adults can enjoy it. I always equate it to Shrek. Shrek is kind of like the absolute top of the mountain as far as enjoyment for the whole family. So if we're mentioned in the same sentence, that is an absolute proud accomplishment that everyone involved in the show can kind of be proud of and wear that kind of medal on their lapel, which is pretty cool.
It is super dope. And we're going to get to the show in a bit. But first, John, I like to start out with finding out where people were born and raised. It kind of helps us understand how they got from where they were to where they are. Where'd you grow up, man? Where were you born?
I was born and raised in Wakefield, Massachusetts, which is basically about 3 towns over from where I currently am in Salem, Massachusetts, the historic witch city of Salem, Massachusetts.
Which city?
Exactly. That city next to the witch house.
Salem, Oregon. Got it.
Yes, exactly. The ones with the witches that enjoyed avocado toast, the hipster witches.
So the beard that you're rocking, I would be more inclined to say you're from Salem, Oregon. Go ahead.
Or it's Salem, Massachusetts. It's a very hipstery place.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, oh yeah. It's a very cool place. I fit in perfectly. There's a ton of microbrews in Salem, so I fit in perfectly.
So you're born and raised a couple towns over from Salem.
Mm-hmm.
What did your parents do?
My mom was a calf lady, and my dad was a butcher, basically.
I'm sorry, what was your mother?
A calf lady. She would serve people in high school food.
It's like a lunch lady.
Like a lunch lady, a calf lady.
Bro, you know that Adam Sandler wrote a song called Lunch Lady.
I know, with Chris Farley dancing, and I called her a calf lady.
I know, what is wrong with
I just got my 90s card revoked. I'm so embarrassed.
Well, I thought that you said cath, like with a TH, and I'm like, this woman just went around putting catheters in people.
You know, it's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it.
It's literally a dirty job. So your mom was a lunch lady, and what did your dad do?
He was like a butcher. He worked at Star Market, the kind of, I think it's a national chain. No, it's not a national chain. Okay.
How would I know?
I don't know. In New England, there's a chain of supermarkets called Star Market. And he was basically the guy that would cut up all the meat and put it out in the front for everyone to purchase.
So if you think he was kind of basically a butcher, what do you think a butcher is?
Well, someone who cuts up meat and repackages it for everyone and then puts it out for sale, right?
That's almost exactly. Wait a minute. That is what you're okay. So you come from food service people, right?
Basically, yeah. I mean, and then my mom was also like, I mean, it was at a time where sometimes like families would have multiple jobs. She was also like a secretary as well. Sure. For a lawyer, and then I think she worked her way through the school system and ended up being a secretary for like superintendents and stuff like that.
Oh, cool. That's what your parents did. Mm-hmm. And I always ask that because that's what's around. That's what's in your sphere of influence, right? So I'm always like, oh, well, what did your parents do? Oh, they were a lawyer. That's why you're a lawyer. Or they're a doctor. That's why you're a doctor. Like my wife's, almost her entire family are nurses. Mother, aunt, brother, sister, her, like everybody's a nurse because, you know, that's what was in her circle of influence. So what did you want to be when you grew up?
I kind of accomplished what I wanted to be because ever since I was a freshman in high school, we had a really, really amazing AV or / TV production program in my town. And I took TV production when I was a freshman, and I was like, wait, you can actually do this for a living and do really kind of fun stuff. And then, I mean, as you can see kind of behind me, I've been a video producer for the last 20 plus years.
Really?
Yeah, ever since I took TV 4 years in high school, studied it in college, and then just kind of rolled with it once I graduated. And it's kind of crazy that a lot of the things were behind the camera and then I end up in front of the camera. So it's kind of a crazy story. Like that's a whole nother crazy story. But yeah, I've been studying video production for lots and lots of years. It's kind of taken me around the world, which is pretty amazing. I've got to do really, really cool projects for a bunch of cool companies and people and all points in between. So it's been a pretty fun ride so far.
If only that job would take you to stand on the Great Wall of China. Are you at work right now?
I am. I am at work right now.
So that's your office.
Yes.
How kick-ass is that?
Right? I work at a shoe company right now in Andover, Massachusetts, the town that Justine is from. We own like 20 different brands.
Wait, the town that the Who is from?
Justine from Making Fun. I don't know if you got to the pirate boat episode yet.
No, we only got to one.
Spoiler alert.
We almost finished the second episode.
Spoiler alert.
We got right to, I guess, where you guys are about to unveil the unicorn bicycles. And then his mom showed up and he was like, well, you can't watch that without me. I'm like, I'm not, dude. Just relax. It'll be here next time.
Well, without spoiling too much, we do have an addition to the crew in one episode, but she is from the town that I currently work in. But working at a shoe company, it's all different brands. So it's like one day I'll be on the beach shooting a model, and the next day I'll be at Jimmy's DeResta's house interviewing him for a work boot company. So it's every day it's different, which makes it really fun.
Okay, so you work for a shoe company, but you make videos. So you're interviewing. Why would you interview somebody about a work boot? Like, where would that end up, I guess?
So basically for that would be under Carolina Boots. I'm sure we'll get to this, but I kind of really pitched Carolina to start sponsoring all the makers I know. This was years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago. And they ended up sponsoring Paul Jackman for the first maker. And then he blew up on YouTube. I think the first video they sponsored got over 1 million views. And then after that, they were like, bring us more makers. And then I was able to kind of parlay my relationships to all the makers that I know into kind of the Carolina sponsorship, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Okay, so let's just take that specific example where you interviewed Jimmy DeResta for Carolina Boots.
Mm-hmm.
Does that interview end up on their website? Is it go out as just a YouTube video talking about their shoes? Like, what's the end result? Where's that final product land?
I did that interview probably 3 or 4 years ago, and that ended up on YouTube. And I think it was a 3-part series. And I like, you put Jimmy in any video, you're going to get some views. But it did very well for us. And we had a whole like interview a maker and then have them build something for Carolina. So I think he's still currently sponsored by them, and he's been kind of building Carolina branded stuff, like really fun stuff for them for the last 4 or 5 years.
So this is like, would this be on Carolina's their YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it was on Carolina, their website for a while. I don't know if it's still up there.
Sure.
It's still up on the YouTube page.
I didn't mean to drill down specifically on that interview. I just kind of wanted to get an idea of what you do. I just kind of wanted to get an idea of where it ends up.
Yeah, and then we do a lot of charity work with domestic and international charities. And like I've ended up in China, like you were saying, I ended up doing a lot of charity work for China. I went to China 3 times for work, and then ended up on the Great Wall of China, which was crazy. And then just today, I'm working on a video for St. Jude's, amazing hospital. I work for another company called Nursemates, and they're doing some sort of charity event.
Nursemates, are those shoes?
Yeah.
Remember, I told you my whole family's nurses.
Oh,
we
yeah.
got Nursemates over there in the closet.
I'm the video guy for them too. So every day is different, which makes it nice. And it doesn't really get monotonous, which I've been incredibly lucky through my entire career, plus through the show and everything. I'm like the luckiest person on the planet right now.
So how many different brands is this shoe company umbrella thing?
It's about 20 now, I think.
Good God.
Yeah, so the company is called H.H. Brown, and we're owned by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway company. And
isn't everything?
Yeah, right. But like from high-end women's shoes to like Nursemates.
Like Louboutin or Jimmy Choo?
Not quite that high-end, but
oh, okay. Gotcha.
Pretty nice shoes. But Nursemates to bowling shoes to blue-collar stuff and all points in between. We kind of have like a checkbox on every type of shoe that you'd need.
That's rad.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I got a buddy who makes shoes. I know that sounds weird, but okay, so we're going to talk about makers in a minute in the maker community. These words, maker and maker community, those are words that I just learned like in the last 4 days. I didn't even know that there was a thing, and apparently it's huge, and I'm out of the loop.
It's a big subculture, and you're just hitting the tip of the iceberg with us.
Really? That's crazy. So I got a buddy who makes shoes. He started off just like painting, like you send him some Air Force Ones and he'll paint, I don't know, your grandma on them or whatever. Right. He does a lot. I don't know why anybody would want that, but he does a lot of work for like athletes, like the NFL will have like shoe day or whatever. And then, the players, they'll basically pay this dude to paint portraits or charity logos or whatever on these shoes because they look super dope. And so he started off just painting shoes, but then he was like, I bet I can make shoes. And so he would like buy a pair of whatever and then completely take them apart, which is something that not with shoes, I don't think, but which is kind of what you did growing up, was just take stuff apart and put it all back together.
Yeah.
And so he kind of does that. And he's made me, I don't know, like a dozen pair of shoes or something like they're insane. They look so dope.
That's so cool. That's awesome. Like a couple years ago, we had this thing where it was me, Jackman, and Jimmy went down to the factory, and they just kind of gave us a whole tour. Some of the shoes are made in the United States down in Pennsylvania. And so we spent a couple days there, and like it was just like kids in the candy store seeing like Jackman and Jimmy's eyes like this big, being like, how does that machine work? How does that machine work? And seeing that a pair of boots isn't just like one person gets a leather, starts stitching it, and by the end it's like 115 step process where it's like, I rivet these things here, then I pass it on to the next guy who stitches stuff, then I pass it on to this woman who paints the outside. It's a crazy process that not a lot of people kind of appreciate how much goes into like a pair of boots.
It's pretty insane.
Yeah.
Oh, just in case you get super busy, bored one day, his name is Doug Romer, and he is at the Original Shoe Chef.
That's a great name.
The Original Shoe Chef, because when he first was coming up with that business, because he was just doing it for friends and kind of on the side and privately, but he ended up working with a guy who's on the Food Network a lot, and he wears a lot of outlandish, fabulous clothing. And so he hired this dude to start making shoes to go with all this clothing. And so because that dude was a chef, he was like, it was sort of a play on sous chef. And so it's the Original Shoe Chef.
Shoe Chef. I like it.
It's pretty dope. He's a super cool dude.
He's got a new follower. Wow. Yeah. His stuff is pretty cool. Wow. Yeah. Very cool.
It's insane, right? He's made shoes for Kelly Clarkson, Post Malone, Justin Timberlake. The Justin Timberlake shoes are amazing.
Wow.
Sorry, the Post Malone ones too, but he's pretty dope.
He'll have to make some making fun shoes for us.
Exactamente. What is Narwhal Labs?
I'll do a kind of a quick abbreviated version of the last 2 years of my life. So when the pandemic hit, I was furloughed from this job.
From the job that you're at right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then a buddy of mine who I actually met at Jimmy's house years ago, side story, where we built a 20-something foot teepee for his girlfriend. Jimmy just invited a bunch of makers over for the weekend. We had this awesome time. We built this giant teepee. But one of the guys I met kept me in mind because he knew I did video, and he just got hired at this makerspace in Rhode Island called Narwhal Labs. And they wanted to start a YouTube page. And it was literally like 3 weeks after I got furloughed. He was like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, just sitting around trying to avoid people. Why? What's up? And he was like, oh, we're looking to kind of start making some YouTube, like maker YouTube videos. And he kind of saw what I was doing on YouTube. And he's like, we kind of want to just take your style and just, can you make videos in your style for us? And I was like, yeah, sure. But it's like 100 miles away. And I live in Boston and you're down in Rhode Island. So that's a pretty good commute. And he's like, well, just come down, just see how it is. And then I did a video for them, and then they offered me like a full-time job. And at that point, I mean, no one knew where the world was going with the pandemic. So I was like, yeah, I'll take the job. I'm not currently working. And so I did that for 2 years.
So did you commute? Did you move there? Was it work from home?
So originally I was going down there 2 days a week. I would either shoot a video for them as kind of the on-camera talent, and I say talent in quotations, and then I would spend the rest of the week at home editing the video, and then we would just kind of rinse and repeat that recipe. And then they slowly hired a couple more, like another maker and another camera guy, And so we kind of expanded a little bit, and then we kind of did that for 2 years, and then things just happened. We all kind of went our separate ways. I called my old job back, and now I'm back here.
So then you got back to where you are now,
Yep.
this multi-shoe conglomerate.
Exactly.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
So I ran into previous guest of this show, Chris Gronkowski, the other day, and it went a little something like this.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Chris. Hey, you know what sucks? When I get done with my workout at the gym, my protein shake's not cold anymore, man. It's room temperature.
Weird. I haven't run into you at the gym lately.
Busted. Okay, truth be told, I don't work out, but I do get thirsty after a long day of podcasting. I just can't seem to keep my cocktails cold.
You should use an ice shaker.
What's an ice shaker?
The ice shaker is a double-walled, vacuum-insulated stainless steel shaker bottle with a patented twist and agitator that breaks up the protein powders.
So you're saying I should switch to an ice shaker, take out the agitator so I can fit more ice in the cup and it'll stay cold longer?
Steve, you don't need more ice. The ice shaker is third-party tested and verified to keep your drink cold for 30-plus hours.
Chris, you're a genius. I'll still remove the patented screw and agitator and just add more booze.
I guess technically you could, but if you actually use the ice shaker as a protein drink cup, the agitator breaks up the powder and doesn't bounce around like you're shaking a paint can.
Why are we still talking? Let's party.
Gronk style!
That's right, Streetwalkers. Ice Shaker is made from kitchen-grade stainless steel so it doesn't smell all funky after you use it a couple of times like those cheap plastic ones. When I'm out and about doing interviews or partying Gronk style, I use the Fascination Street Podcast Edition 26-ounce Flex Ice Shaker cup, and it keeps my drink cold until the sun comes up. You saw Ice Shaker on Shark Tank. All 5 sharks made an offer with Mark Cuban and Alex Rodriguez closing the deal. Now you can get a deal too. Order your own 26-ounce Flex Cup right now at iceshaker.com and use the promo code FSP for $5 off your first order. Once again, that's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP, as in Fascination Street Pod, for $5 off your first order. That's iceshaker.com, promo code FSP.
Let's get back into it.
Okay, you've said it a bunch, and so now we're going to have to address the elephant standing behind you in that room over there.
Okay.
What is a maker?
That's a very good question, and a question I think if you probably asked 100 makers, you'd probably get 100 different answers. But for me, a maker is someone who has the curiosity of how things work and how they can learn how to make it themselves. Like even as a kid, I just love to know how things work. It's kind of like a cliche at this point, but like I would take apart radios and just kind of look at it and be like, what is all this stuff? And then it evolved into when computers became big back in like kind of the mid 90s, my family got a computer and that kind of just sparked a whole nother like, how does this work? And then being a kid from the 80s and 90s, MacGyver was a huge show for me. And I loved Mr. Wizard and I loved the learning stuff. And so it was always that passion of how things work and how to fix it when it breaks and how to problem solve. Like problem solving is huge in the maker community as well, where it's you just see a problem, makers kind of go, I can find a solution to this problem.
Okay, so in a world where builders build and creators create, makers make?
Makers kind of do. I don't know. It, like I said, it's one of those. I'm sure if you ask Jimmy or Jackman or Derek from the show, they'll give you a different answer. But to me, it's kind of one of those things. And you're always learning too. And it's one of those things. It doesn't matter who the person who has knowledge is. It could be someone who's 10 years younger than you. You leave your ego at the door and you want to just share knowledge and basically level up every skill you can possibly have, because you never know when you have to dip back into the well to like pull something, some information you learn from somebody at some point to solve a problem.
Okay. Is a woodworker a maker?
A woodworker is a maker. It's kind of like it's like MMA, mixed maker arts.
Let's see what you did there. Love it.
Where like, yeah, I mean, a woodworker is a maker, a metal worker is a maker, but then they're generalist makers where like Jimmy is kind of the real life MacGyver where he just can kind of jump around to any material and use any tool to make this amazing thing. You'd be like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And then he just kind of pulls this from his amazing brain and then just kind of shows you how to do it. And then you go, oh, I think I can try to figure that out. And then you kind of do it. I equate it to kind of learning a language where you keep at it enough. And then one day you'll hear people talking in that language and you kind of realize that they're speaking in a language and you don't even process that you're understanding it. And so it's one of those things, you watch so many maker videos on YouTube, you start indexing all of that. And then when you're in the shop doing something, you do something, you go, oh, I remember. Yeah, that's the video I learned how that worked. And then you just have this new skill. And it's this never ending kind of journey to find more skills.
How do you find these videos? Like when you get started, like just say a newbie like me, would I just go to YouTube and search makers?
Again, a kind of a cliche, but at this point, Jimmy is your kind of gateway to the maker world.
So he's the maker superstar?
They call him the Godfather for a reason, because I mean, he's kind of the truly amazing ambassador of the whole movement. And hate to break it to you, he's not as grumpy as he portrays on the show. He's actually one of the nicest people I've ever met and a very, very special person.
I'm going to be taking that out.
Yeah, don't tell anyone.
I have an arrangement with Netflix and I can't let you say that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, just completely censor me. Just beep over all of it.
I'll just take all that out. Okay, so the maker community is a community of people who are interested in learning how to do things and learning how to make things, and also, even more importantly, maybe interested in teaching others how to do all these things.
Yeah, I think in the kind of checkbox, that's the all of the above, but it's also in the kind of disposable society we're in. I think there's this kind of backlash of people who are like, let's not throw this out. Let's figure out how to fix it or make it better so we don't have to throw it out, because it's such a waste where you can just fix it yourself and at least try it and see how it works and see if you can fix it. I think that's another big aspect of the maker world too. Let's not throw it out if we don't have to, and just keep it, put it in the corner. And then one day, again, it's hard to define what a maker is, but I think I gave you enough that I think you can kind of get a better idea where a lot of us are coming from. And it's weird to say us, because I think everyone in a sense has the ability to be a maker if they just actually get inspired and go, it's actually not as hard as I thought. Because a lot of people are like, how do you figure all that stuff out? And I'm like, just go to YouTube, watch a couple of videos, and it's a perfect foundation that you can it's a good jump off point.
Okay, well, that's a great segue. Thank you for doing that. Accidentally, even. Let's just say, I don't know, little Graz wanted to learn how to make knives. Would he go to YouTube and then find a video of somebody making a knife?
I'm going to see your segue and raise you a segue, because this is a perfect segue on how I met everybody. Would you like me to elaborate?
You know I would. That's why I led you down that road, girlfriend.
All right. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I like this. So about 6 or 7 years ago, I moved into a 2-family apartment in Peabody, Massachusetts, which is right on the line of Salem, Massachusetts. And when we moved in, the landlord was like, yeah, the guy on the first floor has like a YouTube page and he's like a woodworker and I don't really know what he does. And he's really nice. His name's Paul Jackman. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And then at that point, I thought he only had like 100 subscribers. And then once I looked him up, he had like 10,000. And so I was like, wow. And then I went down the basement and saw all of his stuff. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And at the exact same time, I really got into knife making. And I think it was someone here at work, like their boyfriend made a knife. And I was like, that's really cool. What do you mean made a knife? And then she kind of explained it to me. And I was like, I want to try that. But at the exact same time, when we found this apartment, I was subscribed to one channel on YouTube called Make Magazine, because I did a lot of Raspberry Pi and a lot of computer programming 10, 12 years ago. I was really big into computers and I didn't really have the room to like build anything sufficient. So you'd get a feed from like Make Magazine would highlight makers from around the world that would be like a 3D printer, woodworker, metalworker, and all points in between. All of a sudden, this video shows up and it just says big ass kitchen knife, Duresta. So I watch it and I'm like, oh, this is exactly how you make a kitchen knife. This is awesome. So I scroll down and then the first comment is Jackman. And I was like, wait, hold on. There's a glitch in the matrix. Of all the videos on YouTube, how the hell did you find this one? How do you know this guy? And then Jackman kind of explains this guy's the real MacGyver, and he ends up sending me more videos that Jimmy did. And I completely get obsessed. I'm watching all of his videos. I get obsessed. And then once that happened, it was like this kind of new portal opened to like, oh, wow, yeah, no, woodworking, metalworking, all that stuff. So that was kind of my introduction to the whole maker community.
So your introduction was based out of your desire to learn how to make a knife?
Yeah, and I think that was kind of a pushback in the world that I kind of was in with video production, because back in the 90s when I first learned, it was a lot more hands-on stuff where it was a reel-to-reel in point, out point, and you would edit on these VHS tapes and everything was very tactile and all that stuff. But as the video production evolved, everything became digital. And so I would shoot to SD cards that I would upload to my computer and I would edit on a laptop, and then I would upload it to YouTube, and I never really touched or felt any of it. And it was just kind of like living in the ether of the internet. And so it was, I think my brain was kind of getting that itch of like, you need to work with your hands again. And knife making is kind of like the thing that kind of everyone uses every day. It's like the one tool pretty much everyone uses at least once a day. And I thought that was kind of a fun thing. And I was like, oh, that might be kind of cool if I can give them away as gifts and stuff like that. And then once you make one, you totally get the bug. And then you want to make another one. You want to make another one. And then you're in it at that point.
Okay. So then how did you meet the rest of the fellas? So this is how you met Jackman.
Yeah. So the way I met Jimmy was.
Let's pause for a second. First, I guess we should probably say, who are we talking about? This is the cast of Making Fun. And who are they?
Yes, it is Jimmy DiResta, Paul Jackman, Derek from Malden. I think his last name's Forrester, and then Pat Lapp from Quebec. It's all of us plus Justine Silva that makes an appearance in one of the episodes. So that's all of us in front of the camera.
Okay. Now back to you met Paul Jackman and then.
So Jackman kind of introduces me virtually to Jimmy and all of his videos. And then because my work, because of all the brands, we actually have a showroom in Times Square. So I would visit New York City a lot. And DiResta, back 10, 15 years ago, had this kind of famous tiny shop that was in like, it was like a subterranean shop in New York City where like you'd see the kind of doors open up on the sidewalk where like people would like refill restaurants, whatever, like we got to get potatoes. They would go down there. He actually had a shop on the Lower East Side down there. And as just a fan, I tweeted him one day when I was in New York being like, hey, can I come and visit? And Jimmy, being the nicest person on the planet, was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I just took a cab from Times Square down to the Lower East Side. It was like a 15-minute cab ride. And I'm sitting on like a bench that he made on YouTube. And all of a sudden his like head pops up from the sidewalk. And he's like, Graz? And he's like, come on in. And so he kind of showed me all the stuff he made. I was kind of like fanboying out, being like, wow, that's so cool. You made that axe. You did that. Oh, that's leather work. Oh, that's so cool. And we kind of hit it off. And like I had my camera with me and he's a video nerd. So he was asking me about my camera and stuff like that. And he's like, anytime you're in New York, come back. We'll chat more. I was like, oh, cool. So I was all excited. I was like, oh, Jimmy's the nicest guy ever. Fast forward a couple of years, Jimmy's on a podcast called Making It. And their 100th episode was happening and they wanted to do it in front of a live audience. They looked literally around the country and the only place that would allow them to have free range of the place was Converse, the shoe company, is located in Boston. And they were like, yeah, you just use our space. It's totally fine. And so I was like, oh, that's perfect. I get to go hang out with Jimmy again and Jackman will be there. It'll be cool to like hang with everybody. And then we go there. It's a really fun event. There was a couple other maker podcasts that happened throughout the day. Once his podcast wrapped, there was kind of like a wrap party at a bar down the street. So I'm just sitting at the bar and Jimmy comes up to me and he's like, Graz, you make knives, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and you're pretty local. You're like in Salem or somewhere. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I just met this guy, Derek, and he's super cool. And his son wants to make a knife. Would you like have him in your shop? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. You let me in your shop. I'm going to pay it forward. And yeah, absolutely. And then crazy connection. Derek ended up being dropped off there by, I think, a family member. And I was with my roommate that I used to live in Malden with. And so I drove him there. So like as Derek and I are talking, I'm like, oh, I can give you a lift home if you want. And so he's like, oh, dude, that would be awesome. That would be wicked pissa. It turns out as I'm driving him home, he's like, take a left, take a right, take a left. I ended up living a block away from him before I even knew him. And we always joke that you must have called the police on our parties before. He's like, yeah, I probably did. But it was just crazy how close he lived before I even knew him. Like the universe is just kind of pushing me forward to all of these people. That happened. And then Pat ended up being friends with Jackman through Jackman's YouTube videos. And Pat, his English was very, very poor at best. So he would talk to Jackman through Google Translate for a couple of years, and Jackman had no idea. And then like one day it just came out. He's like, oh, I don't really know English. I'm learning English through Google. And it was like, what? So Pat legitimately learned a good portion of his English talking to Jackman through Google Translate. Pat's an incredibly funny dude. Do you want me to continue the story of how we got discovered too?
Yeah, go ahead and let's talk about how Making Fun happened. Like, how did this get made?
Okay. Yeah. So fast forward a couple more years, Jackman passes 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. He was just killing it.
Now, when you met him, you thought he had a couple hundred and he had like 10,000.
Yeah, 10,000. And
so
then
he's getting to 100,000, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a big deal because once you cross the 100,000, I don't know if it's still a thing now, but I mean, it's been 4 or 5 years now. Back then, when you cross 100,000, YouTube let you either film at the New York studio or the LA office if you wanted to do a video there. And so with that whole thing, Carolina was basically like, yeah, you guys do whatever you want. We'll pay for your trip. Just get video content for us. And we were like, sure. So Jackman asked me and Pat to write a little funny story of him like reading his like hate mail, getting sad, going to his happy place, which happened to be the YouTube studios. And Jackman's also known for making oversized objects like Adirondack chairs. So in the video, he's like, I want to go to my happy place. And he runs to the studio, builds this giant Adirondack chair.
That's a big studio.
It was a pretty big studio. And Jackman he's a big boy. But as we're writing it, we're like, oh, we should ask Jimmy to be in the video because
he's Jimmy.
He's the Godfather. At the time, he had over 1 million subscribers, and you put Jimmy in your video, you're going to get more views. So Jimmy, being the nicest guy, was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll be there. And then unbeknownst to us, he was actually hanging out with Derek for the weekend. And so they both show up. We kind of write them in as kind of the Waldorf and Statler from the Muppets as the two grumpy old guys. And as Jackman's building this giant Adirondack chair, they're just rifling off one-liners, just kind of like breaking his balls and stuff like that. And so have a super fun day of shooting with all of our friends there. Like it was just a really fun day. Completely as a side thought, we were like, oh, let's just take a group shot in the giant Adirondack chair. So we all jump on it, put the camera on a tripod, put it on a timer. We smile. We're like, oh, this will just be a cool picture to have for years down the line. Not even thinking about it. Jackman gets the photo, uploads it to Reddit. And then like a week later, he gets an email from Intuitive Entertainment from LA, like some producer just randomly found this photo and was like, who are you guys and what do you do? Jackman's like, oh, we're all kind of YouTube makers. And they were like, oh, that's amazing. Would you guys be interested in a TV show? We're like, okay, that's cool. Sure. And then it took, I think, 3 years to develop. We shot a pilot for Discovery. They passed on us. Netflix came in, was interested. They greenlit it. Pandemic hit. And then it was just kind of like ups and downs. It was like an emotional roller coaster of we're going to do it. We're not going to do it. We're going to do it. We're not going to do it. And then it actually happened last year, which is amazing that we're like, wow, it's actually happening. Because at one point we were going to shoot, I think 6 months beforehand. And our director at the time was literally driving to the airport. And then he calls us up and he's like, they just postponed it to the springtime. I'm literally like getting on a plane in like 30 minutes. And he's like, I guess we're going to just postpone it for another 6 months. And I was like, oh, we got so close. But it ended up working out. He ended up leaving the project. We got a new director, and it just kind of took off from there.
So that means that you guys filmed this during COVID, right?
Yep.
What was the protocols? Did you all live together? Did you all have to take tests every day? Did you have to wear hazmat suits when you were off camera? How did that go?
So it was pretty strict as far as quote unquote living in a bubble. Where we shot, luckily, it's near Jimmy's house. Well, I mean, it's at Jimmy's house, but where we stayed was like a town over in Windham, New York. And it's pretty sparse as far as people go. So, it's a beautiful little town, but they ended up putting us at this ski resort, but it was like the springtime, so nobody was there. So I lived with Derek in a condo, and then Jackman and Pat lived in a condo right across this kind of pond area. And then Jimmy lived in his house that was 25 minutes away. And then the rest of the crew lived at a hotel a quarter mile away from us. So everyone was kind of like, we lived in this tiny town. Every other morning, I think, when we would show up on set, there was a nurse there ready to stick stuff in our nose. Everyone was in masks. It was very, very professional. And we would get COVID tests, I think, like every other day at some point. Luckily, nobody during the shoot got it and everything went off smoothly. But it was one of those things, because we lived in such a tight community, we ended up getting really close with all the crew. And the crew was amazing. It was my first TV show, but I felt like they were like the best in the industry, and they were super amazingly talented men and women, but they ended up being also awesome people that I like to consider friends, and we still talk on Instagram. So it was really cool. We would shoot 12-hour days. Then a lot of the times we'd be like, what are you guys doing tonight? You want to go get food? And then we would get food at the hotel that they stayed in. And then on the weekends, we would go to the bar at the hotel and just kind of hang out there and kind of socialize within this tight-knit community, tight-knit bubble.
That's kick-ass. So how long did you guys shoot?
I ended up getting there, I think it was April 16th or 21st of 2021. And then we ended up wrapping, I think, July 6th or July 5th. And so it was like 2.5, almost 3 months of living up there. And initially it was 5 days a week, and then it turned into 6 days a week. At some point you could go home, but they were like, if you go home, just be careful, wear a mask everywhere you go. Don't bring it back to everyone and get everyone sick. So everyone was very, very strict about that. And then it turned into 6 days. So at that point it was like, I'm not drive 3.5 hours to go home for a couple hours, then drive 3.5 hours back.
Right.
After that happened, it was just kind of like, we're here for the long haul until we wrap.
And how many episodes are in this first season?
We did 8 episodes. Originally, we were going to do 6, but then I think Netflix kind of saw the kind of fun and potential of some of the builds, and then they tacked on 2 more as we were kind of shooting the first couple episodes. They were like, oh, let's do 2 more. And we're like, okay, that works.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Now, I didn't know how good I had it till I met some other whiskeys from the city. It turns out a small town and an even smaller batch made me the most headstrong spirit both sides of the Pecos. Call me critical batch, Texas bourbon. Raised by a sailor in Bulverde, Texas, bottled at 110 proof, they took me out of the barrel and didn't know which end to slap. So why don't you come taste the pure definition of bourbon, grain to barrel to bottle, and join our little rebellion. You may all go to the liquor store. I'll be at Chaplin Distillery, 30790 Blanco Road in Bulverde, Texas. Ask for CB in the tasting room, and I'll see you soon. That was the Bourbon Talking, Streetwalkers. Chaplin Distillery is proudly veteran-owned and operated. Follow them on Instagram and Facebook, or go to chaplindistillery.com. And maybe I'll see you at the tasting room.
Let's get back into it.
So for listeners who haven't seen the show, it's really a genius concept. So they have kids throw suggestions out to see what these dudes are going to make. And Jimmy, being the godfather, I guess, he gets to decide which projects to make and which projects to pass on. So there's an element where there's children. They're on a video screen, so they're not going to get their fingers cut off. So there's children throwing out these ideas of these outlandish, crazy stuff. And then Jimmy and the boys decide, yeah, we're going to make this. And then that's what the episode is it's them making this kid's dream project, really. It is so much fun. I just can't explain how much fun it is. What happens to the projects after, like, where's that dinosaur now?
So yeah, we like to kind of call it like Shark Tank meets Monster Garage for kids. So it's kind of like we take pitches and then we make all these crazy contraptions that the kids think of. But as far as the builds go, right almost next to Jimmy's house, there was this big storage unit. And I think Netflix for a year rented the space. And like as we would build it, Jimmy's old shop assistant, once we'd wrap one episode, he would bring them to this storage area. He would either drive them or bring, like, we'd be like, oh, there's a pirate ship driving down the street and it's going into the storage unit, or there's a giant dinosaur that's spitting tacos going to the storage unit. So it was there for like a year. And then eventually we were just like, after a year, these are so big. I mean, I don't think Netflix is going to want them. And so I think Jimmy's neighbor ended up, like, he's kind of on this, like, not hippie commune, but he's got this a ton of land. And I think he has like kind of like events at his house. So he was like, can I just bring him over to my house? And we were like, sure. And so there's like a dinosaur holding like a welcome sign, and like the soccer shoe car is right outside of his driveway. And
oh my God, that's amazing.
All the stuff is there. And then the unicorn cycle is there too. And someone ended up taking one of the trebuchets. We figured it wasn't going to be the Smithsonian. So if we can make people happy by giving them all the builds, by all means, go crazy.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Do you know if there's going to be a season 2? Do we know anything about that?
At this point, we're just crossing our fingers and kind of in a holding pattern right now. I mean, we would all love to do season 2, and it was the ultimate summer camp, as I've said a million times. And to do season 2 would be so much fun, and fingers crossed that we get a call. But I mean, it's completely into the hands of the Netflix gods. It's like if you've ever gone to the moon, and then as soon as you land, you want to go to the moon immediately. But at the end of the day, you've still gone to the moon. So if we don't do season 2, we still got to do season 1. And that was such an amazing, amazing experience that I feel like the luckiest person on the planet.
Should we all just tweet at Netflix to bring it back?
Tweet at Netflix. Let's get a change.org, get a petition. We got to get people to sign it. Anything you can do, skywriting, everything. Yell at random people on the streets. Just scream at them, making fun Netflix. You know, grassroots effort.
Love it. We're going to transition just a little bit away from that because I want to know a little bit more about your background. You are, by all accounts, hilarious.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't know where that was going.
Why comedy? Like, what's your, I know you don't necessarily have a comedy background, but why the interest and the pointed direction toward comedy?
My dad was a big fan of comedy, and I was raised on, until I was like 16 or 17, I thought everyone knew who Buster Keaton was. And from Buster Keaton all the way to like modern comedy, like it just clicked in my brain as a kid. I don't know if it was like a defense mechanism, being the shortest kid in class or whatever, but it was always like a thing I could rely on. And I mean, who doesn't like to laugh? It's contagious. Honestly, maybe the maker brain in me, because a joke is a problem with a solution being a punchline. And if you can figure that out and you keep doing it, you can make pretty entertaining videos. And I hope I make entertaining YouTube videos. But I've always loved comedy. I love British comedy, Mel Brooks, Monty Python. I mean, that was my childhood foundation of comedy. And then Airplane, Naked Gun, all that stuff. And then just keep going with it. And it's awesome that like when we were on set, Jimmy has a very, very similar sense of humor. The director shared almost an identical sense of humor with us. I knew we were in good hands when we would joke, and then the director would joke right back and be like, he gets it. This is going to be good. I think we're in good hands.
Oh, fantastic. Back to a joke is a, what did you say? A problem? Is that what you said? A joke is
I think it's like a problem. And then the punchline is kind of the solution to the problem.
So is a frowny face. A frowny face is a problem, and a comedy is the solution to fixing a frowny face.
Exactly. That is a perfect analogy.
Don't patronize me.
No, it was really good. I'm telling you, that was a really good analogy. Like, you should write books about analogy. You're doing great.
I do write books for analogy. Tell me more about your knives. Now, I know that you just wanted to make a knife just because it looked kind of cool, and then maybe you thought you'd give some away as gifts or whatever, but now you have arguably a thriving business that is just knives.
Yeah, I mean, obviously being on Netflix and getting kind of the exposure there.
You're on Netflix?
Am I? I think so, yeah.
You said it.
Yeah,
so
no, I think I am. Or some
All
other
right.
very handsome fellow that looks just like me. No,
Agree to disagree. Go ahead.
You maybe get your eyes checked, because last time I looked.
Last time I looked, I was.
Yeah,
on
last
Netflix.
time I looked, I broke a mirror.
Wait a minute.
I started out just making knives. It was just one of those, I want to know how to do it. Like, what is the science behind it? And the more I looked into it, kind of prodded around, there's a lot more science and not magic, but like, it is pretty amazing how a knife becomes a knife through heat treatment.
Hold on. You said not magic, but I feel like just like magic, if you don't know how the trick is done, then it is magic.
Yeah.
It's only not magic because you know how to do it now.
Exactly. When I tell people like this is a heat treatment, like I've kind of evolved into stainless steel knives, and they're like, wait, so you put it in the oven, then you take it out, then you put it back in, then you take it out, then you put it back in for the third time. I'm like, yeah, it's an actual recipe, cooking a knife. And people are like, I thought it was just metal that you sharpen. And once you kind of, like I said, go into the weeds of it, it really is kind of magic. And it is still mind blowing how people figured this out hundreds or thousands of years ago. And how did anyone figure this out? And it's amazing. And every time you make a new knife and then you cut a piece of paper with it, it's so satisfying. Cutting an onion, everyone does it. But when you cut it with an ultra fine knife, it's the best. It's like hitting a home run, just like with one swing. It's that feeling where you're like, oh, that's so satisfying. So it's kind of chasing that dragon of trying to get the sharpest knife possible.
So you sell your knives on your website?
Yeah, I mean, I usually, at this point, this is not a bad problem to have, but I don't even get to post them on my site. It's usually I'll post someone else's knife on Instagram, and then I'll get a message being like, oh, can you make me one just like that? Or can you make me one with X, Y, and Z on the handle? And I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll just put you on the list. And so it's been growing like that. And I mean, it's almost to the point where I have to kind of close my books because I can't keep up.
How long is that list?
Right now, I think I got about 15 knives I have to do, but at this point, each knife takes a while. So I don't want to give you a date when it's actually going to be done. It's just going to be done when it's going to be done.
Right.
So I would like to get to a point where it's like, I just make knives and then you just buy the ones I put up. But a lot of people are like, the person I want to get it for likes these color combinations, or could you put a little like spacer of purple in there for me? And it's like, yeah, sure, that's totally fine, but it just takes a little bit longer to do. And then I have a laser cutter where I make really like nice custom boxes for the person, and so I can put a graphic on the box for them and make it nice. And I feel the presentation makes it a really potentially nice gift for someone.
Nice. A laser cutter like a Glowforge or something else?
It's not a Glowforge, but very, very similar in the laser cutting world. It's a full spectrum laser.
Gotcha. Remember I told you that I found your show because I was watching that little boy?
Mm-hmm.
His mom has a Glowforge in the garage. And so
that's
I
right.
guess she's technically a maker, right?
There you go. See, they're everywhere.
You guys are everywhere. I don't know if you want to, and you don't have to. I'll take it out. But is there a price range that your knives are in?
Yeah, like right now, I usually charge like $350 for a knife, depending on what the person wants, and then like an extra $50 if they want the custom box with it, or if they just want like a leather sheath, I can do that. But usually it's around $350, and it will all depend on how much detail they want in the handle, what kind of wood I need to go get, or if it's a material that's a little more expensive, it will show up in the final price. But $350 generally is what I'm asking for them.
Oh, rad. Well, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you, but I'm out of time here, man.
What? We're just getting started.
I know. We're just getting started. Man, you remember we talked about Shrek? You're like an onion.
I make you cry.
Yeah. You stinky.
You know, I smell. I make you cry.
Make me cry. Yeah. All that.
Onion is my middle name.
You Graziano. Dude, you seriously, you are a mini layered individual, and I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
We're just hitting the iceberg. There's so many other great behind the scenes stories.
Well, then I guess you'll have to come back.
Honestly, I would love to come back. That would be fantastic.
No, you are fantastic. Graz, can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media and your website, YouTube, all the things?
All the things. So if you go to grazmakes.com, everything is at Graz Makes. And then if anyone is in the area of Salem and wants to come and visit the shop, love having visitors. So all my information is on the website. If you ever want to visit, just drop me a DM or an email, grazmakes@gmail.com. We'll find a time. I just had visitors a couple days ago, and they're actually going to come back. I'm going to show them how to turn pens on the lathe for their kids and just have a good time in the shop and kind of keep the teaching going.
Wow. I mean, from watching you on the show, you seemed like the nicest dude.
The magic of editing.
Right. Exactly. But now, after talking to you for an hour, you are the nicest dude.
Yes.
That is amazing. You're so rad.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. I feel very grateful for everyone, including you, who have watched the show. And I mean, if people want to visit and they want to spend time, it's the least I can do. It's like a general thank you to everyone who has watched the show and has told other people about it, because again, not a lot of people get this opportunity, and it has been amazing to hear all this amazing feedback from literally around the world. It's overwhelming, and it's one of those I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. I'm just very lucky and I'm very grateful that people take the time and take the chance on our show, and it's just super cool.
Well, speaking of super cool, you, my friend, are super cool.
Oh, thank you.
John Graziano, Graz from Making Fun. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and your hectic making schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you seriously reaching out. And again, I would love to come back and talk more about anything you want to talk about.
So rad. Thank you so much, man. You go have a great rest of your week, man. And I really, really appreciate it. I really, really do. I had a blast.
Oh, thank you very much. I hope you have a great weekend.
All right. Take it easy, buddy.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2001 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jack's Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.